We have now gotten to witness 2 years of Jordan Love being the Green Bay Packers starting quarterback. And so I think that there are a lot of things that we have gotten to see in the past 2 years that can sort of help us in assessing how he's really played overall in the past two seasons. So I want to go into my overall takeaway on Jordan Love now exiting, his second season as the Green Bay Packers starting quarterback. And going back to last year, when I saw Jordan Love play like he did against the Dallas Cowboys in that wild card round, I think for myself, I think for many other people, my expectations of what Jordan Love was and could be were really elevated to a whole nother level. Because in that game, I think we really did see the type of play that we've seen from Aaron Rodgers over the years with him being in Green Bay, for 15 or so seasons. And so when you see that, when you see him go into a playoff game where you're the, one of the lower seeds and you play as well as you did, the expectations reach another level. And so that game in my mind has been and had been all offseason really what I thought Jordan Love could potentially be consistently in the 2024 season. And unfortunately, he didn't really live up to that level of play all year long. That's not to say he hasn't been a very good quarterback. I do think he's been very good overall. But in my mind, I really thought that going into 2024, he could really be talked about in the top 3, top 5 potentially. Guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. After last year's playoffs and assuming that he could take a jump forward in 2024 and see some more consistency, I really didn't think it was that crazy for him to really enter that kind of conversation. The Packers paid him, $55 million per year, tying him for the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And so in their mind, I think they also saw some of that as well. And if we look at how Jordan Love played overall this season, I would say he's definitely more around the 10th best quarterback this year. If you look at some of his stats, 25 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, a 96.7 passer rating, which ranked 12th in the NFL, 10th in QBR, and 9th in EPA per play among quarterbacks. And so that's the thing here with Jordan Love is naturally going from Aaron Rodgers, you do sort of expect a certain kind of play. And I think at the beginning, I was very willing to sit back and see, okay, let's see how good Jordan Love is. I think it's too much to really put the Aaron Rodgers level expectations on him, Hall of Fame level quarterback expectations on him. I don't think that's fair for a player. But then when we saw Jordan Love did what he did, the final 8 or 9 games last season, 18 touchdowns to 1 interception, and then he has that playoff game against the Cowboys, my expectations went to a whole nother level. And unfortunately, he didn't quite live up to those this season. And as I said before, I still think he's a very good quarterback. This isn't to say he can't reach that level. He just didn't really, reach that top QB level in 2024. But still, to be the 10th best quarterback, he was very good, very efficient for the most part, relatively to the rest of the league in 2024. And I think the biggest thing for me, one of the bigger concerns, is just his inconsistency. And I just think that, Love and this Packers offense as well need to find a way to beat good teams. The Packers lost to, a lot of the top teams in the league, like the Vikings, who have lost now, like the Lions, like the Eagles in week 1 and in the playoffs. And I do think a lot of that does come down to Jordan Love really need to, take this team to another level, especially early on in some of those games where it took a long time for the offense to get going. And I think the great thing about Jordan Love is he can really turn it on in the second half and really pull the Packers really close to victory, which happened a lot. And so I think that's one of his great qualities is he's never, to a level where he's just going to sort of give up and quit. He's always, fighting, playing tough. And lots of times in those games, the Packers did almost come back to beat the Vikings, almost came back to beat the Lions in that second game. And so I think for me, it's just we need to see more consistency, not just from Love, but from this offense to start games against good teams heading into next season. And then when we look at Jordan Love in the playoffs so far in his first 2 years, we have 3 playoff games to go off of. I would say he had one really good game, the Cowboys game, which I talked about earlier in the video. But then he's had 2 pretty poor games. The divisional game against the Niners last year, I think he started off well, finished with a bad pick. Finished with 2 interceptions. And then against the Eagles, he just played some of his worst football all season. 3 picks against the Eagles. One of them could have been on the receiver. Matt LaFleur talked about the receiver not running the proper depth of the route. I think he was talking about Malik Heath. But there was also another ball that was dropped by a Eagles defensive back. So it could have been 4 picks for Jordan Love in that game. And so now in 3 playoff games, Jordan Love has 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Definitely not great overall. And then when we look at his accuracy, that has been one of his bigger issues, and it's actually an area we saw a big decline this season. And I was digging into some data here from Fantasy Points, and this is quarterbacks who at least have 250 dropbacks in 2024. And I look at his 2023 numbers as well. So in 2023, last season, he's 10th in accuracy percentage at he's 10th in catchable pass percentage at 77.9% in 2023. He dropped down to 22nd in catchable pass percentage in 2024 at 73.9%. So that's a drop off of about 4 or so percent. He was 12th in accuracy percentage in 2023 at 52.3%, so pretty close to 10th there with the other stat. But this year he drops from 12th to 35th in accuracy percentage at 45.2%, nearly a 7% drop off there. And so for whatever reason, Jordan Love just was not as accurate this season as last season. And I think that could be from a lot of different factors. I think one that I have seen some people speculate in the comments is Jordan Love's injuries. There's no doubt coming back from his MCL sprain early in the year, that did affect him for a few games. Then he has the groin injury. Then he has the elbow injury. I'm not sure if it affected him much in the Eagles game. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. He's not really the kind of guy who I think would use that as an excuse. And I don't think it's wrong for a guy to say, yeah, I was actually injured. I think it's just honest, but I'm not sure we'll hear that from Jordan Love. And so that's one potential reason for his accuracy dropping off this season. I'd be curious to hear if you guys have any other theories as to why that could be. Maybe it's just natural regression. I'm not sure there. And so, my overall assessment of Jordan Love, as I said, I think he's close to the 10th best quarterback in the NFL, which is still very good. And so I think, this could sound like, I'm bashing on Love, think he's not a good quarterback. I do think he's a very good quarterback, and I still think that he has the potential to be the best quarterback in football. I think we all see there are moments in games where Jordan Love takes his play to another level. And when he's playing at that level, which I think is his upside, there really wouldn't be another quarterback I would take if Jordan Love was playing his best football. And so I think that the fact that it's still only his second season starting, there's just still a lot of room for growth. And I was looking at Brett Favre's stats early in his career. His second season, he had 19 touchdowns and 24 interceptions. And then the next year, he throws like 33 touchdowns and 14 picks. And so we can see big changes come from even year 2 to year 3. And so that's why I'm not saying, okay, Jordan Love's never going to be the top quarterback or be in that discussion. I think he can get there. It's just after this season, right now, I think he's more like the 10th best quarterback. And until we sort of see him take that play consistently to another level, I think he'll stay in around that range. But I do think he has the potential to do that. He has the skills. He has the talent. He has the work ethic. He has everything I think you want from a quarterback. And the question now is really seeing it going into his third year starting. And looking at some of his receivers, I know there's a lot of talk right now about, some people think the Packers, need some better receivers. And I think on the one hand, I think having a veteran presence could be good, just even for the fact that this team is very young. And, having someone like Davante just from a, mentorship and veteran presence perspective in the receiver room could be beneficial. But when I look at some of these numbers, the receivers, I think for the most part were solid route runners. There's no doubt about that. I'll show you these stats here. The one area where they did struggle was catching passes. They were, one of the worst units in the league when it came to dropped passes. And so that does negatively affect Jordan Love in a big way. But those accuracy stats I was reading to you guys do not factor in, they take away drops. So the accuracy percentage is like the amount of perfect balls you throw, where it's like you're throwing it exactly where it needs to be, leading the receiver, things like that. And so even if you take away the drops, Love still wasn't very accurate in 2024. But the Packers have some of the best route runners in the NFL, and I'll show you some of the numbers here. I shared this in a couple weeks ago. But Romeo Doubs, third in the NFL. When you look at receivers with 100 routes, these are the stats from Fantasy Points, minimum 100 routes this year. Romeo Doubs, third in route win rate at 23.6% in 2024. So Doubs is one of the best route runners in the NFL. And so in my mind, it does make me wonder if Doubs is getting open at such a high rate compared to the rest of the league. I guess why is he not getting more targets? And so I think that if you're Doubs and I do think he's an elite route runner. I think these numbers show it. And Matt LaFleur before this season, in times past, had said that he reminds him of Davante Adams. And so I just think if we have a guy who's one of the best route runners in the NFL, I think that the Packers going into 2025, really need to consider making him more of a focal point, because I still think that he he's looked at it a big way here in Green Bay. But because the Packers do have so many weapons, the ball does naturally, move to the other guys as well. But I do think that from a route running perspective, the Packers are completely fine in my opinion. And so that's why I wouldn't be completely upset if they didn't add a single person to the receiver room. I do think, though, with the Christian Watson injury, that's where it gets a little tricky because of his ACL. He could miss early next year, and I do think they need to have that sort of deep threat, deep speed ability. So that could be one area where I am, not, fully sold on them not adding anyone. But again, would I be opposed to Devontae coming in? Would I be opposed to T. Higgins coming in? I mean, no. I mean, anytime you can add a top-tier receiver, I'm all for it. I just don't know if that's really the Packers' biggest problem. In looking at the rest of these guys, Christian Watson, 7th in route win rate in 2024, 22%, so slightly behind Dobbs there. Dontavian Wicks, 6th at 22.1% in 2024. Wicks is still a really great route runner, and I wouldn't give up on Wicks completely yet. I think that he's had a lot of issues with drops, and if those continue, it is tough to trust those guys, and I think that can affect, your quarterback when you're trying to, decide where you're going to throw the ball. If a guy's dropping it a lot, especially with the guys like Rodgers in the past, it doesn't really build your trust or your confidence in them. But I still think Wicks is a very young player. I think he can improve his drops, and if he does, he is a very good player, and he's also great when it comes to after the catch. And then Jayden Reed, actually, just looking at these 4 Packers players, 70th in route win rate at 13.2% in 2024. And so he's not quite the route runner that these other guys are, but he has that yards after the catch ability that these guys don't really have quite as much. He's incredible with the ball in his hands after the catch. And so for me, I just do wonder if we have 3 receivers in the top 10 in route win rate, I think part of that does fall on Jordan Love getting these guys the ball. And so I'm not sure if it's, of course, at times, a quarterback can miss an open guy. Of course, different guys are different progressions when it comes to reads. And so just because a guy's open, Jordan Love could be looking at another guy in the first read. He's open as well. And so I think there's a lot of different factors that factor into what happens here. But again, the Packers offense is really good, and they were a top 10 unit in 2024. And I feel like the way I'm talking, it sounds like, man, the Packers are terrible, but they're not. I just think that the expectations that I had for this team was really high. And when you have them, fail to succeed against the top teams, there's definitely a lot of room to grow for what the Packers can do here. And so all in all, Jordan Love's a very good quarterback. He has some things he needs to improve, and I still think he can get to that level. And so I think it's about developing and growing and, hoping to see some more consistency from Jordan Love in 2024. But I'm a huge Jordan Love supporter. I really want to see him succeed, and I think he will. I think he can get to that level with more time and, hopefully being fully healthy going into 2025, because we don't know how much those injuries affected him. It could have affected him way more than maybe it's even perceived from us, from the public. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. If you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter/X at LukeBeller3 for more Packers content, more stats. But thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you guys next time.